All right. Hello. All right. Let's start talking about Sparkflow. John, you talk to leaders across equipment finance, manufacturing, and other industries weekly. What's the number one complaint you hear about data and analytics?
Yeah, some of the common themes that come back are we have data everywhere, but we don't have information. And so the data is scattered through all kinds of things. People are doing their own ad hoc reporting, dumping data out of systems. They've got spreadsheets everywhere and nothing is repeatable. So everybody seems to be doing an ongoing data dump and just trying to figure out what's going on in their business. And so they don't have anything that's consolidated and consistent and vetted. They'll go into a meeting on Monday morning and there'll be 8 people in the meeting and there'll be 10 different answers for the same question. So that's an ongoing problem.
Yeah, and I bet it's in every single industry, right? There's not like
Yeah,
an exception.
yeah,
Yeah, you
without a doubt.
see it everywhere, and that's such a crime. They have all this data, but they can't really leverage it. Walk me through some signs you look for in conversations to try and understand if someone's data infrastructure is holding them back.
Yeah, I do ask about things like Excel. Do you run your business on Excel or do you run it on the system that you paid lots and lots of money to implement? Do you have a backlog of report requests that's an arm long that you can't get an answer for 3 months? It's in the IT backlog. Are there differences in how different people answer the question that you're asking as a business leader because they don't have a confidence in the data that they have in front of them?
Yeah, confidence is really key. Like you set up the scenario in the last question around, I think probably can't use that. We talked about earlier, um, people sitting in a meeting, right? And 10 different answers to the same question, right? That's a really good way to kind of vet. Excel, yeah,
hmm
that's a really good way to that's a nice gateway question to see where people are and what the opportunity is for sure.
My grandmother used to say, if the paper sits still, you can write anything you want on it. And an Excel spreadsheet is the electronic version of that adage.
Even if it's not the right stuff, you can put anything on there, even if it's not accurate.
Correct.
That's a really good point. Yeah, the accuracy data can be messed with and who knows what we're looking at, and it's so critical.
And people don't do it intentionally. It's just their understanding of how things are to be calculated and what are the measurements and what does this number mean and versus this number, and having a common vernacular of what the terms and the measures are. Part of the process that we go through is let's really hone in on what the official answer to this question is.
Yeah, what does profit mean? Like,
Exactly.
yeah, one department says one thing, another department, and they're not able to connect and really get at the heart of an issue because that core level was called level one problem isn't solved. And like, what are you talking about as far as profit goes? What am I talking about as far as profit goes?
Exactly.
What do you think having suboptimal or even rudimentary data analytics and BI actually costs companies these days?
It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it cost them, but there is a cost. What's the decision that's made that is not optimal? So if you're not operating out of truth, you're making decisions and you don't have all the facts that you're needing to make a decision. So they could be small little incremental decisions that are made day by day and are suboptimal, or they could be massive strategic decisions that affect the overall direction of the company. So they can be really small or they can be really large.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I would also add, sometimes we see even just, because they have rudimentary systems, because they're Excel, they're spending time putting the data together. So it's, actually kind of a workload thing that can come in when they are using rudimentary systems to figure out their data. But to your point, the sweet spot is really in that critical decision making and making accurate decisions.
And we have customers that say it takes us 8 hours before we can come up with the answer because we dump the data to Excel, we massage it, we transform it, we add to it, and then we come up with the answer. And by that, it's the end of the first day, and you don't have the answer. Well, the data has changed underneath your feet. And so the answer could have changed. And so people spend a lot of time building the answer versus using the answer to make a decision.
Yeah, and maybe then by then you forgot the question.
Exactly.
What am I even doing this for? What's my real question?
Yeah, no, and another typical example, Danielle, is that they run a report. It takes 10 minutes to generate. They dump it out to Excel. They read it on a PDF, whatever their method is now. And that report begs another question. And so they go and run another report to dive into more detail on that one and really find out what's happening under there. And so the approach that we take is that you've got all the answers there in front of you. Let's allow you to really drill in, hone in, and answer the business question that you're trying to answer. And then when you come back with the second question, then you can pivot into that. You can slice the data, you can dump the data out and manipulate it so that you can really see what's happening.
Yeah, and that's so critical. You need your teams to be curious and to keep digging. They find that initial nugget, we'll call it, and but the real answer may be a couple layers deep. And if they don't keep digging, they may not get to the right solution. So that's, absolutely
And to
important.
your point, it needs to be responsive so that they can go at a speed of thought. As soon as they think of the next question, they can drill right into that. They can really hone in on what the answer is and what it's supposed to be and not forget the question that they're asking.
Yeah, right. They get so busy putting the data together, they like, what am I even doing with this? What
Exactly.
am I trying to solve? It's very common. And then they get 15 interruptions with other activities they need to do, and they've lost the plot.
Hmm.
Right. So I'm imagining a lot of folks are in the midst of budget season. It seems to never end. It's always as soon as you finish one budget, a new one starting.
Hmm.
Why do you think Sparkflow is a must to add to the mix when there's so many other tools out there?
I think to be able to get to the data quickly and to get to a really comprehensive analysis set is really what we're about. It's historically, as I built these in my career, it would take weeks and months and sometimes even years to build out a really complete set of analysis for a company. And what we've done with Sparkflow is to get at those answers very quickly. And we have a concept of an iceberg where much of the work is done below the water and nobody even sees it. But that's the bulk of the work. So what we've done is really compressed that cycle and made it repeatable so that every day you've got the answers in a common, again, vernacular, the terminology of the business. And then we get to the above the water answer, the reports, the analysis, the graphs, visuals of that data so that people can make a decision. And data governance is a big issue. Where are we storing it? How are we calculating in it? Who has access to what? And then we can be confident that the right people have the right answer at the right time.
Yeah, it's kind of foundations, right? We discussed around making the right decisions, having the right data, but getting there is, multi-step process and can be a lot of work. And what Sparkflow does is answer a lot of those foundational questions. So my favorite analogy, building a house, if you're building a house on top of it, of decisions and analytics, their foundation is solid. The foundation kind of below the surface,
Right.
but so
And
critical to scale. You do more analysis, make more decisions, add more data, add more companies, that type of stuff.
And the other thing about it, Danielle, is that we use the same data for all levels of the organization. So
Mm.
if it's your exec team is making strategic decisions and using the KPIs to see where the wind is blowing, where the opportunities are, it's the same data that the supervisor on the shop floor is using. It's just aggregated at a different level. So that each little line of each row in the database all rolls up to the whole organization. So we have consistency across the board.
Right. The kind of one version of the truth
Mhm.
concept type of thing
Mhm.
makes so much sense. I know you hear this one a lot. So we already have Power BI. Why do we need Sparkflow?
Yeah, that's a common question that we get. Power BI is a great tool. I've seen it used really well and I've seen it used really poorly. And it is not the tool for the equivalent of what we do in a data warehouse where everything is vetted and proven. So, not unlike the Excel spreadsheet where you can make up your own answers, your own calculations,
Mm.
you can embed that in Power BI as well. And so you don't have the confidence that it's consistent, vetted, perfect answer for the business to operate from. And
Kind of like
so,
the concept where the foundation isn't solid. So you're kind of building a house of cards type of thing.
exactly, that's a good analogy.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. Power BI is very powerful. It's very functional. The visualizations are great, but it's only as good as the quality of data that you give it, right?
And the process you use to get it in there.
The process. Yeah, true. True. And because it's not a one time thing, right?
Exactly. We got to do the same thing every day, every hour. It all has to be calculated the same way to give you the right answer, the consistent answer across the board.
Right. Yeah, it's a continual process. Very interesting. Let's talk about Sightline. Why do you think specifically this product works so well for Sightline customers?
Well, Sightline is a very powerful, specific ERP for manufacturers, captures an immense amount of data. So everything from the general ledger, which may have hundreds of millions of rows of data, to the shop floor tracking systems, inventory systems, and all that. It has a high volume of data. And so, because it's so granular, it's a little bit hard to wrangle. So, getting these multi hundreds of millions of rows into a database and into a data warehouse, it really compresses that and lets you see the forest for the trees, if you will. And if you need to go see the trees, you can drill down into those minute details down at the transaction level, because again, the transactions build up to the full story. So Sightline has a very consistent, well-structured database. There are standard ways that most everybody uses to calculate their sales or other measures in their business. And so to bring that data out, compress it, and bring it back so that they get that high volume compressed into a really small responsive data set is really helpful for people. So we're not putting a tax on the transactional system. We're bringing that data in, compressing it, bringing it into analysis mode, if you will, and making it visible to the organization.
Safe to say, kind of doing some of that heavy lifting um, um, for the teams or whatever. So, how does that translate to the equipment finance industry?
Yeah, likewise, equipment finance has different data, but it has a lot of data, lots of transactions, invoices, opportunities, being able to translate those opportunities into leases that need to be managed, to see the detail, to anticipate when there's a problem, a customer is falling behind in their payments, to be able to alert that and bring that forward without having to dive into every record in the database, and to bubble up the problems or the anomalies in the data, that something might be happening that you wouldn't see without really looking into it. So bringing those up to the front and saying, hey, who's fallen behind? They've never been late, but all of a sudden they're 5 days late, 6 days, 10 days late. And now we need to take action on that to stop the bleeding, if you will.
Right. And I just like many other industries, equipment finance companies tend to use multiple systems to run their processes and run the company. Customer journey will touch several systems. So in order to get a holistic view of that,
Mm-hmm.
pulling data out of all of those different systems and aggregating that is really critical to
Sure.
see a full
And that's
full picture.
something that Sparkflow does, is we bring data from multiple systems and we consolidate it into one place. A system like Sightline that we talked about earlier, it's pretty comprehensive in the full waterfront of the business. All the order to cash processes, the purchase to pay, that all lives within one system. But in the equipment finance industry, as you mentioned, there's a CRM system, there's a lease management system, there's a GL system, and they're all sort of disparate. And we can bring that data together into one picture.
Yeah, which is so critical. You might want to see data around your receivables or the performance of your leases so that when that customer comes back or that vendor comes back, you can assess that performance in the front end again. So kind of create a loop so that you've got the full picture of that customer or that vendor and make better decisions, right?
Mhm.
So it comes back to making better decisions every
Better
time.
decisions and eliminating risk.
Okay, let's be honest. Data projects like this don't always go according to plan. So, what does implementation actually look like, and what should an executive team, decision maker budget for time and resources?
All the $1 million questions, but hopefully not $1 million. One of the approaches that we've taken is that we get deep into certain systems and we know those systems inside and out. And when we do that, it makes the process to build the data warehouse, to find the data, to process it, to do the measurements and all that, make that very streamlined. And so for systems that we've built solutions for, those can go in very quickly. I'm working on a proof of concept right now that I would expect that within 24 hours we'll have a full suite of reporting off of this one static database, because we know this data, we've built it before, and we're going to have the answers for this customer very quickly. Now they're going to have nuances to their data and how they operate, and that's probably the last 15% because of the uniqueness of their business and how they're using a system. And that's where we can apply sort of a template approach, but now let's enhance that to fit their specific business needs, and then drive the analytics to really be tailored to their business. So time wise, our projects are very fast. they don't have to be done all in once. We can focus on one particular problem area, and then we can come back and address a new area. So we can get incremental value as the organization is able to absorb that new information, a new way of seeing the data.
Yeah, I like it. You can either do a blitz all at once or kind of crawl, walk, run,
Hmm.
where you do one segment, release it, and build upon that. Especially probably good for those coming from very rudimentary levels of data. Just don't overwhelm them. You got to get them used to it and kind of build from there. Makes a lot of sense. So, on that topic, a lot of people hear data integration and think 6-month nightmare project. I kind of understand that, been there myself.
Hmm.
Can you walk me through what it actually looks like to connect Sparkflow to existing systems?
Yeah. So our first activity is to do some discovery on that system that we're going to connect to. If
Mhm.
we have internal subject matter experts that really know the data, know the table structures, that sort of thing, they're worth their weight in gold because they can help us find what we need to do. Many companies don't have that expert in the organization, but we're pretty good at sleuthing out where the data lives and going on the Easter egg hunt to find the right data for what they need for their analysis. Those projects are a little harder because it takes a bit of discovery and digging and vetting that data and comparing it to existing reports and make sure that we've really honed in on what's actually true. So if we've worked with the system before, we've got a great head start. If it's a completely new system and nobody in the organization really knows much about that system and the underlying database structure, then it makes it a little bit harder for us to where we're going to have to really dive in and discover. So once we can get that data, we bring it through to the data warehouse. We go through what's called an ETL process. We extract the data, we transform it into the business terminology, and then we load it into the data warehouse. And then we can build reporting off of that.
Yeah, so it sounds like the heavy lift or the wrinkles come in at the beginning if they're going to come in. If
They
so, I
do.
was thinking of the analogy of if you're data miners, right? Literal miners, and if it's a mine you've been in before, you can get through it really fast. If
Sure.
it's a new one or it's got complex or not well built, that
Hmm.
happens sometimes.
Does.
It's a bit trickier, and that mine takes a little bit longer to work its way through.
And if we don't have headlamps to navigate through the mine, it makes it a little harder too.
Thanks for playing off my analogy. I like it. That's great. But yeah, it makes a difference. Though the piece I would like to add is that if we're going to play with this fun analogy, is that we are data miners. It's not like you're throwing plumbers into this or some this,
Hmm.
you're going to be faster at it because even if it's a new system, even if it's not well structured or complex, that there's some usual suspects that
Exactly.
you've seen before. You may be able to get to the answer a little bit faster, even though it's slower than we normally do. The fact that we're so used to this type of projects and looking and mining for data that we can get to it faster than the average person because we have that experience. And
Sure.
with we have encountered all sorts, right? So we know Sightline very well, we know other ERPs very well, but we've also encountered a myriad of different systems of all different types. So we've seen it all type of thing.
Right. We have, for example, one client that has 40 different ERP systems, no two the
Yikes.
same. And so each one is that another channel in the mine that we have to go to bring on a new company, a new bring on a new subsidiary. But like
Yeah.
you said, you get good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of know where the diamonds are.
Hmm.
Look at
Where they
us.
likely are.
Where they likely are. True. That's good. Okay. So now your data's connected, which
Hmm.
seems so simple, I'm sure. But anyway, you're connected. Now what? How fast can I see value?
Yeah, it's a great question, great point. So again, in systems where we have that experience, we know the logic. So I mentioned the ETL process, extract, transform, and load. The T should be a big capital T because the
Hmm.
transforming it into the logic of the business is where we're taking what the system might store as codes and translating them into the business terminology, performing the calculations according to the way the business does their calculations, and getting the information from the business user to really determine how they want to see things in their reports. And we build, rather than building a specific report that has one purpose, we build what's called a star schema, and that data contains the structure that would support hundreds and maybe thousands of different reports outputs. And once it's all structured and set up in there and loaded into the data warehouse, I always tell people I'll let somebody else do that hard part because that's really the 80% of the work is to get
Mm.
the data set up right. I'll do the reporting because you've done all the heavy lifting for me. And at that point, it becomes somewhat of a drag and drop or a color by number exercise. I've got my 64 Crayola crayons in my box. That's all my data fields that I have available to me. And I just need to draw a picture of the data and the reporting and the way that you need to use it to run your business or run your area of the business.
The fun stuff, right? That's the fun
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah. And the visualization I think is so important as far as really getting people to consume the data, to synthesize the data. It's different than looking at numbers on a spreadsheet. That's part of it, but those visualizations, to your point, even can carry your analogy forward. That's the colors that really help highlight, help people kind of make those decisions, get to the answer. You need both, not just the kind of traditional Excel spreadsheet. Sometimes you need that, but that visualization, the crayons are key to get that speed of comprehension type of
Exactly.
theory.
One statistic is that our brains can comprehend a picture 10,000 times faster than we could just a grid of data. So we can tell the story of the data by seeing a well designed visual of the data and come to conclusions very quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It makes intuitive sense. We've all been there. We
Hmm.
know what life is like. We
Hmm.
can see a picture, it's worth 1,000 words, right?
Hmm.
All right. So you mentioned that Sparkflow gets you ready for AI. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, so the data that we have historically used for reports, visuals, analysis, dashboards, etc., is great and necessary. Every company needs them. Every company uses them to really help gauge and guide their business. But that same data has a dual purpose or can have a dual purpose, and that's really the exciting part of the next evolution of BI and data warehousing. To be able to take that data, use it for our reports the way we do today because the business will continue to run off of those reports. But there's an off ramp for that same data where we can put those into large language models, private large language models for just that company, and use AI tools to do anomaly detection, predictive analysis, natural language query, natural language query that we do with customers where there's not a report that answers the question that they have in their mind. And so they speak or type in the question, and then a few minutes or a few seconds of AI tools bring back an answer and a narrative of the story of their data. And when you have people that aren't as comfortable with technology, but they are great business people that have the intuition about the business, they can ask those questions of the data, have it come back to them, and they say, oh, that's the answer I needed. I couldn't ask my analyst that question and come up with the same question or the same answer, but the AI tools answer me and answer in a way that I can interpret.
You're getting the answers immediately or semi-immediately versus the next day or the next week, and it's keeping that curiosity strain going and that digging to find the core of the issue and
Yes.
natural language in building reports and getting data is the coolest thing. I love it. Again, it's just unlocking that data to people to use it very efficiently with very little friction, and they're getting at the source of their issue, the source of the opportunity. I also want to underline predictive analytics. I think that's been around a long time, but I think AI is leveling it up as
For
far
sure.
as accuracy and using more data to be predictive. And I think about the applications in business are so profound and widespread of like using all your data to predict what could happen next, like what vendors, what customer behavior, the opportunities. That's really cool. And it's to your point, they've done all the work to get to this data reporting structure and now they're really ready for AI. And if you've read any articles on AI, it is about having
It's all
solid
data driven.
structured thing. Yeah, very much so.
And the same processes that we use to make the data clean and ready for reporting are the same necessary steps to get it ready for AI tools.
Perfect. Yeah. So, what kind of results should companies expect in the first 90 days using Sparkflow?
I'll start with one that's kind of interesting, and I see it every time, is that they find where there's garbage. So it's not what they're looking for.
Bad
They're looking for
data.
bad data.
Okay.
I draw the analogy to you drive by this creek every day and you go through a drought and all the level drops down and then you see the beer cans and the old
Mhm.
bicycles and all that, so you see all the trash. Once it's really brought to the surface, if
Yeah.
you will, you see, oh gosh, we have bad data. And every company has bad data. It's just a matter of how well they've done with the data hygiene. But it gives, a lot of times it spurs an effort to really clean up the data and make it better for analysis and reporting, because we don't want to see that garbage anymore. So that's one of the things in the first 90 days, the ahas of, I don't have bad data. Oh, I have bad data. And so that's sort of the not a sexy part of what we do with data warehousing, just to find the trash. But what we love seeing is that the exec team or the management team who can see the analysis very quickly, they don't have to ask somebody else for the answer. They don't have to wait for the report to get generated at the end of the day. They can go in and do self-service and the answers are there. And we've gone through the due diligence ahead of time to make sure that those answers are correct according to the business rules. So self-service is a big thing. And then once we've built confidence that the data is correct, then to start doing things like alerting and thresholding when something drops below a certain threshold. We're not meeting target. A sale went out yesterday and it was at a 10% margin, and expected margin our expected margin should be 22%. So let's find the problem areas and bring those to the surface rather than just letting them pass and not seeing them because they're in the big mix.
Yeah, and as you know, in business, taking earlier action is always cheaper and easier than waiting for things to go down the road and now it's harder and more expensive to fix. So using that kind of, yeah, highlighting type of alert,
Hmm.
even just on a spreadsheet, on the reporting, showing colors,
Right.
highlighting in greens and reds or whatever is typical, so that the manager, the team is alerted to, like, this is a critical piece of data. Let's dig into that type
Sure.
of thing. Makes
And
a lot of
I'll tell
sense.
you a story, a real life story after making an implementation of one of our data warehouses, is that there was something hidden from the client where they had not billed for nearly $100,000 in orders that had been satisfied. Somehow in the ERP process, it just got missed. It was hung up there, and they would have never seen it if they would have just been operating off of their traditional ERP system. So ROI right there,
Yeah.
paid for the
Yeah, that's
project
a
many
good
times
one.
over.
I'm sure that happens more than people like to admit. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a tough one.
Hmm.
So, kind of, I'm going to come back to the natural language stuff. It's so interesting. So, we've demoed some new natural language features that we are rolling out in Sparkflow. Can you just talk a little bit more about why you feel this evolution is important?
Yeah, I think going back to some of my earlier comments, reports aren't the be all and end all. They
Mhm.
are important, they're necessary, they're helpful, but to really get into the deep heart of the business, it's a little bit more hidden. And so to ask good business questions of the data and let the natural language queries, the AI tools bring that out, tell the story of the data, and use the accumulated knowledge that these AI models have. It can tell a story that can really give us new insights and new direction and actions to take because of X, Y, or Z is happening.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
think I'll add another piece to that. I think on the human side, it makes people more interested in playing with their data. It just makes it, it feels more human. It feels more
mhm,
natural to ask a question versus, what report should I open up? Where should I find that data point? No, I have this question, just answer it. And
mhm,
so it really encourages those who maybe aren't data driven, or they just don't have that inclination towards it, makes it easy. They're just more accessible. Makes
I
people
agree with
want to
that.
do it. Yeah. All right. Last question. I'll let you go.
Okay.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to executives thinking about their data strategy, feeling bogged down by legacy systems? And there's a lot of those people.
Mm. Hmm.
I bet.
Hmm. Your data has a lot more value than you give it. You've accumulated all this knowledge and history and experience. Bring that out in a way that you can get at it and gain some intelligence and wisdom from the historical data, because that's going to help you to look forward into the future and see what's happened in the past. It's not always the indicator of what's going to happen in the future, but it gives you a basis of understanding. Data is an asset that needs to be really utilized, and so few companies have used it to its fullest extent. And this process of what we do gives them great hope that they can really bring a lot of value to their organization and give success to their business and growth to their business and do all the things that reason why we do different things in our companies.
Yeah, like they say, I'm going to get this quote wrong, but data is the new gold.
Hmm.
And you talk about even when it came on the scene, OpenAI came on the scene, and Google, they're going to eat Google's lunch, and of course that race is still running as we speak. The side that Google has is the data. They have all of the data. They have so much data on humans of Earth. It's the same idea. And I've heard that quote where data is the new gold, because that's where, and you talked about it earlier as far as AI. You want to be AI ready, you have to have foundational data readiness to be AI ready. So that makes a lot of sense.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
You do. Okay. Well, thank you, John, for answering all these questions. I think a lot of great information here for our listeners, and I appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks, Danielle.